real life. Technology is always so good. Every once in a while we get glitches, but we're good here now, I think. We should be running live on Facebook. And for those listening to this show on Facebook on a live stream, this is the Ed Hour, where we're going to be discussing this hour, the barriers to education and being able to remove them. So I want to tell you a little bit that about our sponsor. We're here at Prototype Prime, an incubator here in Peachtree Corners that's been here for over a year now. And they have a 12,000 plus square foot facility and working with startups, high tech, and hardware companies, doing a terrific job here in Peachtree Corners. So I want to thank them for the use of this podcast studio and for the ability to do these shows here, not only this show, but the Ed Hour with the city manager and several other shows that we've done here on political candidates and such. So without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Alan to introduce our guests here today.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us again for this next edition of the Ed Hour. Today's topic that we'll be reviewing with some wonderful guests today is barriers to education. And so a lot of times when we send our kids to school, we have a lot of confidence in our teachers and teaching staff, but a lot of times we're not aware of some of the issues behind the scenes that affect some of the kids that are going to school. So we wanted to discuss what are some of the barriers to students' education in our school system, and then how those barriers are being addressed both by the county and some of their partnerships. So today we have three wonderful guests. Appreciate y'all being there. We have Mr. Eric Thigpen, Dr. Kimberly Bennett, and Pamela Jemerson. And I'll let you go, starting with you, Eric, just go through and introduce yourselves and what you do for Gwinnett County Schools.
Well, and thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's a pleasure to serve in Gwinnett County Public Schools in this great community of ours in Gwinnett County. I serve as Executive Director of Academic Support. In short, that's student services. And so we exist to ensure that students have what they need, not just in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom, to ensure that they can maximize their learning potential.
Hey, I'm Kimberly Bennett, and I serve as the Director of Health and Social Services. And in our office, our role is to remove those barriers that impede teaching and learning. So we do whatever we need to do to ensure students are successful.
Good morning. My name is Pam Jemerson, and I am the lead social worker with Gwinnett County Public Schools, and I supervise the social workers as well as the homeless liaison and our foster care liaison.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much again for being here on this cold morning.
Yes.
And so really grateful for y'all to be here, and we look forward to learning a lot during this next hour from y'all. So if we could, maybe if we could start out, and as a parent of both of us are parents in public schools here in Gwinnett County, we've seen some of the issues that we think impact students' ability to learn and distractions in their life outside of the school and outside of the classroom. But I think no one's more perfect than y'all to be able to kind of share with us what some of those barriers are above and beyond what we may even be aware of that you see that are challenges for some of the kids going to school.
Well, I'll just start and say that kids are kids. When we grew up, there were issues that we had. There were community concerns, and things have just accelerated now in light of technology. And so our kids are having to grow up much faster. They're engaged in things way too soon as a result. And consequently, we're having those things played out at the schoolhouse door. And so we recognize that all the social ills of society are played out at the schoolhouse door. All the headlines that you read locally as well as nationally get brought to the schoolhouse door. And we can't divorce our kids from what they're experiencing in our neighborhoods, in our country, in our world. Those emotions, those feelings, those anxieties that they have at home, it comes to school with them. And we have to serve them, no matter what they look like, no matter how much money they have, no matter what their educational background is. It's our job to serve them and to give them a world-class, rigorous education to ensure they're prepared for the world that they're going to be great citizens in. And so those challenges look very different in different areas. And we go a long way to ensure that we try to individualize as best we can the needs of those students and those families. But with that, the more that we do outside of school, those hours that we do have them, the less we can do with them in school.
Right.
And so our core business truly is teaching and learning. And the more we can focus on that core business of teaching and learning, we feel the more educated our students will be. And so it takes partnerships. It takes our community. And I remember as a kid growing up where the community was ever present. I couldn't go around the corner and do something and the word not get back to mom and dad. No cell phones were needed, but word got out that,
Right.
hey, Eric was messing up.
That's right.
If I needed a ride somewhere, I could always, call the lady across the street, and she would take me where I actually, needed to go. And so, I appreciate your partnership and your willingness to engage us in this conversation. While the needs look a little different, it feels a little different. At the end of the day, the person that looks in the mirror and that we see each and every morning is important to that person that we see individually. And the 180,000 students that dart the halls of our schools each and every day, that person they see each and every day is just as important to them as the person we see in the mirror each and every day.
It's amazing how you spend more time with your teacher than with your mom sometimes.
Correct.
And that mentor and the influence they have on that child's life, it's just unbelievable.
Absolutely.
So it's exceptional to be able to find an exceptional teacher. And thank goodness, I think Gwinnett County has enough of them
Yes.
to be able to do that right.
And in fact, I think I just recently reached out for my high school social studies teacher. Went to my high school, I won't say which number reunion it was, but it was a big one. And my high school social teacher, I reached out to her to share with her what an impact she had on my life during, for many teenagers it was a difficult time. And so yeah, to your point. So.
And I would say in our office, just to give you a deeper dive, we support the county school nurses. We have 12 county school nurses and 1 lead nurse, and our lead social worker, Pamela Jemerson, and 19 school social workers, as well as a homeless liaison and a foster care point of contact. And in that capacity, we all know student health is a strong predictor of academic achievement. So if students are not healthy and able to perform in school, then achievement in teaching and learning can't take place. So our county school nurses work with local school staff to help them with students that have asthma. We partner with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta to provide resources for them. They provide training materials for us so that we can train the local schools. If there's a brand new classroom teacher, they have the academic piece covered, but if they have an asthmatic student in their class, they may not know how to help that student, or a student that requires an EpiPen. They may not know what to do, so our county school nurses provide the training for them. They'll sit in on meetings with them, they actually train county school staff as well. Transportation, school nutrition, all of those people that might interact with the students and need to know what to do in a medical emergency. And I'll tell you a quick story. When I served as the principal of Swanee Elementary, we were in an IEP meeting, and I had an allergic reaction, and the county school nurse in there was able to help me during that medical emergency. So they not only help the students, but they help the staff too, yeah. And we call on them quite a bit. So I'm really proud of the work that they do. They're small in numbers, but mighty in their force. And Pamela may want to share a little bit about our homeless liaison and some of the things that she does.
Yes, one of the things as the leaders have articulated is the needs of the students have increased over the years, and so we're faced with dealing with or seeing a lot more in the schools on a daily basis. And how do we collaborate and assist these students? Kind of, as social workers, we always look at how are we able to peel the onion to kind of figure out what's going on underneath so that the student can learn. And so in our programs, for example, our homeless program, we're looking at what are those barriers that are keeping them from learning, and how can we help to remove any of those barriers, despite their situation, because we do have a homeless population in Gwinnett County. We do have our foster care children in Gwinnett County, but again, despite their circumstances, what can we put in place to help remove some of those barriers and help them be able to achieve academically to their best ability?
Do you find that you count a lot on the teachers in the classroom to be able to identify the barriers that might be there, that might not be apparent or easily apparent?
Absolutely, and not just the teachers, but our bus drivers, our enrollment clerks, because the enrollment clerk, when you're brand new to Gwinnett County, that's the first face that you see, and our office also supports that process. We provide the training for the enrollment and admissions process in Gwinnett County Public Schools, and what we do is we teach them how to answer those questions and address it in a sensitive manner, because not everybody wants to identify as homeless. They feel like there's a stigma, and one of the things that we share with them, you shouldn't be embarrassed about that, because the resources are here. We're here to support, and one life circumstances or change could put you in that place, and if the resources are here, we want people to take advantage of them. But we want to do it in a way that they feel welcome and comfortable to ask for those resources, and we're able to link them up with outside community resources as well as local school resources.
So I want to kind of have you kind of just list through for us some of the barriers that we're alluding to. Some of them we've mentioned, and some of them I know of as well, such as homelessness, hunger, vision issues, and economic circumstances that may not allow those to be addressed. Can you kind of just go through other barriers that you see on a regular basis, and then maybe we can talk more specifically about them, but just want to kind of go through what are some of the other barriers that you see on a daily basis impact students, and then talk about how we're addressing those.
The top one that comes to mind that we deal with on a very consistent basis is affordable housing. That is a big issue when we look at especially the cost of housing and the ability to afford what is available in Gwinnett County can be a big barrier for our students. The other thing that I think we face, especially with our homeless population, is transportation, the inability to be able to get around based on their situation.
And I would say from the health side of it, parents that are not, if you have an asthmatic student, because that's one of the top areas that we support on the health side, they may not understand how to support that student. So if they have an asthma attack, a lot of our parents, they'll keep the kids home, and we want them to know you can bring them to school. Diabetic students, we train our staff how to work with them. Parents, sometimes newly diagnosed, they may keep them at home. We want them to know, bring your students to school, because we're here to support and provide whatever is necessary in terms of helping them navigate that medical emergency or that medical situation. So I would say asthma, parents keeping them at home is one of the big health issues, and with our diabetic students as well.
And along the health lines as well, I know that we have some, and we could get into them later, but I know that we have some great vision programs,
yes.
and so I guess there's undiagnosed vision issues, kids needing glasses that may not be aware because they haven't seen an eye doctor. Is that also from your end,
Yes,
is that a big...
in our office, and typically they will make a referral to the school social worker if it's an issue where the parents can't afford to purchase the glasses. They'll make a referral to the counselor, will link them to the school social worker, and the social worker will determine what the need is and help them, link them up to a community resource.
But that can be a barrier as well, because there are limited resources for if someone actually needs glasses and paying for those prescriptions, etc. So there are some resources out there, but it's not enough to meet the needs of all of the students in our county. So we're always searching for additional support and help in the county.
Just say two additional things I think that our students are really struggling with is just life skills is one. The resiliency that it takes to be able to bounce back from adversity. I think they're tough enough at times, they just don't know how to navigate it. And so our school counselors do a great job, along with our social workers, helping our students with coping skills.
Can you give us some examples of those life situations that our kids are facing while they try to focus on their education?
Well, there's some very real issues that some of our students deal with. Some of our students have seen some of their parents murdered. Some of them deal with ideations of homicide and suicide. And so helping our students navigate with good self-talk, good positive thinking, being able to help themselves stay in a good place, it can be a great challenge to anyone, especially when you're talking about being in a good place in terms of learning at a very high level. In addition to that, I would say that school readiness is really becoming a big challenge for us now. It's probably something that we don't talk about enough. Our kindergartners are not coming to school ready. About half of our students are not kindergarten ready at this point. And so,
why do you think that?
well, I think that there are a multitude of reasons why. Literacy is the foundation of that. So being able to see, recite words and colors and things of that nature. I think poverty plays into that because if they don't have a good pre-K program, or if our churches that are having the daycares are not aware of those life skills and educational rigorous standards that are needed, that becomes a challenge. Our parents oftentimes are working 2 jobs in single parent homes, and so they're left to the care of these young ones, of older siblings at times, who don't have the life skills to really nurture our youngest children. And so we need more pre-K programs. We need our daycare programs to really help us prepare our students for the rigors of kindergarten. And you may think that kindergarten is not rigorous, but when you think about it,
I think it's the toughest.
Yeah,
I think it's the toughest teaching job in our school system.
All the
Former
backstory.
kindergarten teacher,
Yeah.
yes. As an elementary school principal, we would see that quite a bit. And students that do not have a pre-K experience in that poverty piece, they typically stay home with a sibling or grandparent, and when they come to school, that's their first experience in school, their first opportunity walking down the hallway and going to the cafeteria. Forget the academic piece, but just being in a structured environment. And a lot of our schools, I know when I was a principal, our cluster did it, but now I think all of the schools are doing it. They have a summer program for the students to help them get those readiness skills in terms of operational. Where's the restroom? How do we sit for circle time? How do we navigate the cafeteria? So when they come to school in July or August, they're ready for the academic component. And that helps, they're familiar with it. It's not an unknown. And as a former principal, our parents, we also have a little camp for our parents in terms of helping them let go and trust us, because kindergartners, those are your babies and you don't want to let them go. So we have programs where we support our parents as well and help them understand what the expectation is. And it's not the kindergarten that we had. It's very rigorous, and we have kindergartners that come in reading. There are 3-year-olds that have that reading experience already, or they're ready for that. And then there are those that can't identify letters or numbers. So they come in on all levels, and our district does a really good job of supporting all of those levels, identifying and individualizing and supporting what they need so they're successful. But as Ms. Jemerson said, we're seeing more of that, and it's taxing resources, and that's we have to reach out to our community people. Gwinnett Coalition is one that we reach out to. We work with a lot of agencies that will help us in terms of supporting these students by linking the parents with the resources they need.
I'm curious, you mentioned there about the readiness as far as preschool and such. Does the county provide, is there a way that the county provides maybe workshops for churches or other organizations that provide preschool to say, listen, these are the benchmarks. If you want to prepare your student your child for school in the Gwinnett system, you should be looking at these benchmarks, and let's help you, show you how to meet these standards or get there. Is there any sort of program like that to help these types of organizations that have these kids?
That's a great question. We're collaborating now with those agencies. Our library system, they do a great job of working with us. Kim Holland in our district office does a good job of school readiness with that. She's working with those agencies. We've got connections with the organization called Learn for Life, which is a Metro Atlanta kind of ARC consortium of folks where we're looking at not just school readiness, but what they're calling from cradle to career. Right? I mean, how do we start preparing the children for school, and in doing so, helping them find their niche and getting them to their jobs, in terms of job readiness. And so we are collaborating with them. We can do a better job, and we just had this conversation just this week, as a matter of fact, in terms of engaging our churches that do have those programs, so that they do understand what the rigors are, the standards are, even what the data says. The challenge is oftentimes the students who are engaged at a church are already engaged anyway. They've got the support. So we've got to find ways to engage those that are not engaged, and help them understand those standards. The sight words that kids have to know by the time they leave kindergarten. If they don't know those and get to a place of a third grade reading level where they are not reading, the data is just not good in terms of long-term outcomes for that student. And so the work that has to be done from the cradle really up to grade 3 is foundationally critical to the success of this organization, Gwinnett County Public Schools, the very foundation of our community, as well as each individual student. So I think we would welcome the opportunity to collaborate more with churches and other daycare organizations to help them understand those rigors.
So, and I do want to begin getting into some of the different organizations and so forth, but just to kind of recap some of the barriers, and then see if there's anything else that is not on this list of the more significant things that are impacting our kids, and then I'd love to be able to dive into some of that. So we talked about health issues, whether it be asthma or diabetes, causing parents maybe to keep their kids at home when they could and should be in school. Vision, the different adversity impacting our kids, just life events that we'd like to think our kids aren't exposed to, but the fact of the matter they are, and there's many more beyond what obviously you mentioned, Eric, but just because someone's a student doesn't mean that they're immune from seeing and experiencing those things in their family and in their neighborhoods. School readiness, we were just discussing, transportation, affordable housing. Are there any other major barrier areas that should be on this list of things that are really distracting our kids from being able to focus on learning?
For our office, those are the major areas that we focus on. District-wide, I'm sure there are others that are identified, but in our office, those are the ones that they call us for.
Okay.
Those are the barriers that we address.
And then I would ask one other question is, these barriers that we're discussing, they're not unique to Gwinnett County schools or to Gwinnett County, are they?
Correct.
So maybe speak to that about a second as a whole, and then let's begin to get into some of these partnerships.
And Pamela, you want to start now? I know you've worked in other school districts in other states as well.
So I think that the difference is that the size of our county makes it, such a large issue because of the number of people that we have and the number of students that we're serving. When you're talking about homeless population, housing is going to be, affordable housing is going to always be a concern and an issue. And along with that, transportation, if you don't have the means to afford your own transportation, we're looking at, the possibility of public transportation. So, we are probably not as equipped with public transportation in Gwinnett County as other systems are. That's kind of where I would.
Yeah, and I would just, language barriers, right? Our students that speak other languages, primary languages at home. That's a barrier for our students in terms of learning, but that's not unique to Gwinnett County Public Schools. That's something that we're experiencing nationwide. The fact that most of our African American, I shouldn't say not most of our African American males, but a lot of the discipline issues that we see systemically across our country, it does deal with African American males, and some would say maybe the most at-risk population. And so that's not unique to Gwinnett County Public Schools either, but we do find unique ways to serve that population. And so I've worked in a number of school districts in the state of Georgia, in South Georgia, in Metro Atlanta. I've worked in the state of South Carolina. The issues that we're seeing are not unique to Gwinnett County. To the lady's point, we just have more of them. I mean, you're talking about 180,000 students, and you're talking about students that are coming in and out, meaning the mobility rate, that we see. It does create a challenge for us, and it's not the Gwinnett of old. And those days are probably not coming back. But I'm excited that we have the right people, right, that want to do the right work to support our students for such a time as this. And so I believe the future in Gwinnett County Public Schools is very bright. A lot of people can have this conversation and they say, oh, woe is me, and the world is just going to end in a year. And I don't think that. I think that we have a wonderful opportunity to embrace the diversity that's here in Gwinnett County Public Schools. I think it makes us great. That we see things from different angles, that we're learning about ourselves and about others. I think it's a strength for us, and we're embracing that opportunity, and look forward to ensuring that every student in Gwinnett County Public Schools, that every school, and Alan, we talked about this a little bit, is not just enough for Gwinnett County to be a world-class school system, right? We need a system of world-class schools. Every school in Gwinnett County Public Schools needs to be a school of choice. And we are working each and every day to ensure that every student, every parent, every school is world-class, and every parent student has an opportunity to send their student to a world-class school.
I love the way you put that. I love the way you put that.
And the other thing, that's on the rise is the mental health issues. We're seeing those at a younger age for our children and our adults, but we're seeing them more in the school systems now because nationally, all areas of mental health are on the rise, and so that's something that we've got to continue to deal with. Another barrier to the teaching and learning piece, because if we don't deal with the mental health issues that are happening with those students, they cannot learn.
That's pretty broad. Do you see more depression, more anxiety?
It's all of the above. Yeah, all of the above.
So and both Rico and I have kids in public schools, and we do choose to send our kids to public schools, and particularly Gwinnett County schools, because we're thrilled with the quality of the education that our kids get. And from my perspective personally is I think our school system is reflective of our global world that we live in, and so I'm thankful that my kids have an opportunity to learn and grow up in the world that they will be in when they're no longer in school. But I think to some of our listeners, as we talk about these issues, barriers, and some scary topics, these aren't unique to, many of them aren't unique to kids that go to public school. I think many of these issues apply to kids regardless of where they go to school. And the real question, and really my desire and our desire to focus on this topic is to begin to highlight what Gwinnett County chooses to do in order to address those issues, to make our students more successful and our teachers be able to focus more on teaching. But yeah, if you could maybe begin to cover in these areas that we discussed, what are some of the programs that Gwinnett County has in place to address and remove some of these barriers, and then what type of partnerships you have as well?
So I would say, to Pamela's point, with the social emotional piece, that being a national issue with mental health and such, Gwinnett attacks it in a unique way, because if you look at the Georgia Health Survey, it's an issue not only in Georgia but also nationally. But for Gwinnett County Public Schools, we partner with SEPTA and Viewpoint Health to provide some support services in some of our local schools. We also, with Viewpoint Health, have 3 clinicians that work in our schools on all levels, elementary, middle, and high, and our school social workers, counselors, teachers, principals can make referrals to that program, and those clinicians will help, again, link those parents with services. Another issue I don't know if we mentioned is not having the medical insurance needed to address these issues. So if a parent doesn't have the resources to take the student to the doctor. I remember sitting in on a meeting and the student had been diagnosed with a medical situation, and the mom, rather than taking the student to the doctor or bringing them to school with the medication and such that they needed, they brought them to work and they slept in the kitchen area while mom worked. She was washing dishes for a restaurant, and we were able to link her up with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, provide the resources. Viewpoint Health was able to help with some other issues. So it's just once they identify and let us know, or if we see that need, we'll find the community resources. Salvation Army, Rainbow Village is one.
Just as a whole, Gwinnett County does a wonderful job of partnering with community resources and linking our families with those resources. There are so many that we can actually mention that we're partnering with on a daily basis.
I would say also our government agencies have gone a long way to help us with a plethora of resources. Our faith-based community has helped us tremendously as well, and in a multitude of ways. One in particular that in a very organized and real way is our community-based mentoring program, which serves our African American males, our African American females, and just this year we've launched our Hispanic and Latino community-based mentoring program as well, which will launch officially in January. We're looking forward to start with about 65 students in that program, and so we need more community mentors that are willing to step up to help there. Our African American females, we have about 300 girls there that we're serving in about 7 clusters. We've got 19 clusters in Gwinnett County Public Schools, and out of those 19, we're currently serving 7. This is our 2nd year with our females. We've been serving our African American males for about 10 years now. We're in every cluster, and about 900 students is what we're looking to have served by the end of this school year. And so there's a great need for men and women who are willing to step up to spend, maybe 2 hours a week. 2 hours a month, to just guide and support and nurture some of our most at-risk young people that need support.
I like the 2 hours a week better.
Yeah, so if anybody listening has those extra 2 hours per week, I'm sure they would welcome that as well. They wouldn't turn you away.
Yes.
We also partner with Gwinnett Technical College and Juvenile Justice to provide support for those non-traditional students that, we have a population of students in our county that the traditional path is not for them, and they drop out for a number of reasons, and we want to meet their needs as well. So we support them through a GED program partnership with Gwinnett Technical College, and we have some success stories there where we've had students that have dropped out of school, earn their GED through this partnership, and they receive credit for college with Gwinnett Technical College, and they graduate with a certificate. They have job training skills, and that's a program I'm really proud of, because although you're not a traditional Gwinnett County Public Schools student, we still support you because you're a part of our community, and we want to make sure you have the resources you need to be successful.
That's what I like about Gwinnett County. I don't know if other counties do it, but it seems to me, and I never knew this until we started getting into this, that the system really does go so deep and wide outside the school to help these kids at any age almost. I mean, even at age 17, 18. That I'm so impressed of the caliber of people in the programs that we have.
Well, and again, I always think of with these programs and with what we're doing in our public school system, regardless of where you send your kid to school, whether you send your child to private school or to public school, what we are doing in our public school system has a significant impact on our community. So regardless of what your school choice is, every community needs to be highly successful with their public schools, because those are our citizens of the future, and they will either positively or negatively impact our quality of life in our communities. So to have a strong school system like we have creates a better quality of life for everybody, with in our county and our cities and even in our state, because that's what we put out into the world. And so I appreciate the degree and depth of the investment that we're making through our public school system.
I would just say, I think what's unique to Gwinnett is the relationship that we have with our Chamber of Commerce. And so to all those who are listening, I just want to take a moment to say thank you to our business partners in our community for really engaging in a very real and committed way. As I talk with other leaders around Metro Atlanta and other school districts, I really think that partnership is foundational for us, and it's extremely unique in terms of sustaining the success that we've seen over time in Gwinnett County Public Schools. So thank you.
Cool. And I'm sure that's where a lot of the mentors come from, right?
Absolutely.
From businesses,
Yes.
and because they have the time to a degree,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you have parents working double jobs or two parents working in a household. It's tough to be able to also volunteer and become a mentor along those levels.
So let's talk about some of the partnerships you have that focus more on homelessness and hunger. What are some of the programs, both internally and partnerships externally?
Cooperative ministries, we partner with, I think there's 6 of them.
There's six cooperative
yeah.
ministries that we work with on a daily basis, and they serve our students by zip code.
Mhm.
So depending on where the student lives will depend on where they're being referred to, and they deal with a multitude of issues: housing assistance, food, clothing, and they also have the ability to help us with individual needs. For example, our gift centers, you can only wear certain clothing to those centers, and so that wouldn't be a clothing item that they would have in stock at their ministries, but they will give us gift cards to help that student get specifically the items that they need to go to school. We have partnerships and work with a few transitional housing programs, Home of Hope, as well as Rainbow Village, who help to house some of our families. Salvation Army also does some transitional housing and some emergency housing. There are just tons and tons of agencies that we work with on a daily basis.
I would just add, Matt Elder and United Way, they are reaching out to us in a very aggressive way to support our students that are homeless. And so we are looking forward to continuing to strengthen that relationship that we have with them as well.
What do they do exactly?
Well, we're very in the foundational stages of that, Justin, so we're really looking forward to strengthening the relationship there with them. But they are committed to help us remove that barrier that is homelessness.
Let me ask you something. The government tends to put out RFPs for everything, right? Requests for proposals. And I keep thinking as I'm listening to this, and the vast amount of needs that are required, and the vast amount of different organizations in a variety of places. Is there a component on the website of the county that someone that decides they want to help, because this is what they want to do as a corporate entity, to be able to zone in and say, you know what, I could go to this website and I see that this cluster needs these things. There are needs here specified. I want to be able to do something here. Is there anything along those lines? Or is this being done like on a one-on-one basis where you find the need, okay, let's make that connection, that dot connected, as opposed to these are all the needs, and having a, I don't know, a better way of putting it, a portal that someone can go to and say, you know, I can do that, like Vision. Like, I know there's one or two organizations that provide some of that. But I'm sure there's others that may be seeking that out to be able to do that, because that's their corporate mission, to be able to provide that to the community. Is there anything along those lines?
We are looking at tools like that. As a matter of fact, they brought me one or two tools that we are vetting right now through our
Okay.
data governance, just to make sure that we can manage that well in a very secure and tight way. But right now, one of the best ways probably is through our foundation, our Gwinnett County Public Schools Foundation. Is a great way to just give financially, as well as find out ways that you may be able to direct time and things of that nature.
Right, time or in-kind services
Absolutely.
and such?
So currently, our Gwinnett County Public Schools Foundation is probably the best way, but we are
Okay.
investigating other tools, maybe even app-based, things of that nature, to be able to help our community engage in a more tangible way.
I see that with larger organizations that are fundraisers, where their app, it's easy to Venmo some money over, or PayPal, or what app? I think that's the other one. Right? Or Cash App, or I don't know. There's a bunch of them. But I see the ability for someone to say, I think I want to help there. I could do that right now. Let me send some money, or let me put a contact in because my company does this, and this is what I want to be able to help with. Because sometimes on that spur of the moment, on that ability to say, I'm inspired right at this moment, I want to be able to help, is the easiest way to get help. Because when someone has to step out, there's another barrier. We're talking about obstacles that we want to remove so that people can't help so easily that it becomes, you'd be looking at this like, more of this. Give us more.
So even something as simple as someone hearing this podcast and saying, you know what, I didn't realize that homelessness is an issue in public schools. I want to help with that. Is there a way for them to easily connect with our school system to say, I want to help make a difference here? Is there an easy way for them to route into that and be a resource?
Well, we have our homeless liaison, Carla Wallace, and she attends community meetings, and she will go out and share information about the program, but contacting her would be a great way to share information, or call in our office. And there's a link on the district website with our name and number and contact information for those that may want to support. And we also partner with DFACS to support our foster care population.
But I like what you're saying, Rico. I like the concept of having a central portal, a clearinghouse. That's easy to. It's one place for anything. As a member of the community that you want to support our schools, and of course, Gwinnett County Schools is a huge ship to steer. I get that. So there's lots of great ideas, and it's hard to implement even a small tweak sometimes. But I do like the idea, because there are so many wonderful programs and things happening, and people connecting with our schools on an individual basis or a local basis, but I like this idea of having this central clearinghouse to come into and then go out from there through the resources that we have.
And maybe the apps that you're investigating and vetting right now might be the place.
Very well may be, and the ladies know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's premature for me to release that now.
Yes,
We already
definitely not.
invested in
That's right.
some
And
of those.
I see the big smile. So
Yeah.
that's a good thing, then. All right.
So again, if we could continue on this line of internally, what are you doing, and then some specifics about some of the organizations externally.
Yeah, and I would just say there's some very natural things that we don't consider that have worked over time and continue to work. For example, we know that students that are more engaged in school, regardless of the issues that they face at home, tend to achieve at a very high level, have a greater sense of belonging. For example, clubs, activities, and sports. And so even in our elementary schools, we have organizations like our All-Pro Dads, and the dads come in and have an opportunity to interact with their young people. Clubs, we're chess club or STEM club or things of that nature. But as they get a little older and get engaged in sports, we have just a myriad of sports teams, and as you know, we have highly decorated sports teams. And we're very proud of the partnership that we have with the Atlanta Falcons right now at the high school level. First time we started girls flag football, and the Arthur Blank Foundation, the Atlanta Falcons, they funded that for us. As a matter of fact, we just completed our preliminary season-ending tournament, December the 20th. The Falcons are actually going to give up the Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Really?
And our girls are going to play the season-end tournament there. And so, giving our young girls an opportunity to venture into avenues that maybe traditionally they haven't ventured into, giving them a sense of having a purpose that may be different than their mother saw. So sports, clubs, and activities is another incredible way to engage, and people. We need volunteers there as well. Need folks to help out, and be it with meals or statisticians or being able to come in and speak, and support our young people. Sports is one of the greatest ways to help people build life skills, overcoming adversity. You win and you lose, and getting along with people that don't look like you, that have different backgrounds. And so supporting those efforts, I think, also helps tremendously.
I remember when I was again, going back to high school, talking about, again, the things that impact our kids when they're in school that are beyond their control. I remember I went to high school with a guy that lost both of his parents during his either junior or senior year, and he stayed in school. And I couldn't imagine dealing with that life event at that age and still staying in school and focusing on education and working through that. So again, just another example of things that our young kids face regardless of where they go to school, but there has to be mechanisms and programs in place to be able to support them, to help them be successful, not just in school, but to take that school success to carry them into a successful life. And so again, I think the better we are at doing that, again, it helps our community as a whole. I do want to, because the hour is going by quickly, there are two other things I want to make sure we don't miss the opportunity to discuss. One is, if you could just kind of share with us the process of identifying some of these barriers, and then reporting those barriers to the resources or entities within the school system or externally to have them addressed. So I guess it's where the rubber meets the road, literally, from the school bus drivers, as you mentioned, to teachers, to the cafeteria staff. Just talk to us a little bit about how these things these needs are reported and then addressed.
So with the homeless program, typically that'll happen right at enrollment. The parents will share information about their living situation, and our enrollment clerk will provide them with the appropriate paperwork to complete and link them up with our homeless liaison and let them know. We may provide gas cards for that parent to help with transportation back and forth. We may work with our transportation department to reroute a bus. So we identify them as soon as they walk in, and then we have some that have barriers to enrollment. That's where Carla Wallace, our homeless liaison, she'll work with them to help them get enrolled in the school that best meets their needs, because they may be temporarily housed in Swanee, but they live let's say in the Shiloh cluster. We may route a bus so that they don't lose that school community that they started out with, because they have so many other challenges. So, or the parent, we may not route a bus, we'll provide them the gas cards because the parent wants to transport them back and forth.
And just to add to that, there's federal guidance and funding, as well as state guidance and funding that supports those efforts as well. And so oftentimes that's not local dollars. Oftentimes there's compliance that we have to abide by at the state level and the federal level as well that guides that. And so what Dr. Bennett was speaking to about the transportation, that's called School of Origin. And so that's a national practice based on the guidance of the federal government, where students are given the opportunity to stay in the school that they started. Because, again, stability is one of the things that you want to make sure that our students have.
Yeah. I'm sure your department, the school system has a grant writer or grant seeker, searching these things out too. I bet.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
I was gonna just add, when you talk about how do we get the referrals, we basically, as a system, we try to provide, training to different entities, but it's really all hands on deck when it comes to what are the issues that's impeding teaching and learning. So when you start to see behaviors or start to see something different in that child, how do you make that referral to the next person to be able to address those issues? So it's not one person or one point of contact, it's really the entire school that is looking for, or not necessarily looking for, but observing and then referring.
And so does each school have a social worker assigned to it that then those funnel typically in the school to that social worker, then out from there? Is that typically the process, or?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, we have 19 social workers that support the 19 clusters. So one social worker may serve anywhere between 6 to 10 schools, and they do have that assigned social worker. So that's the social worker that will work with the counselor, the principal, to support whatever those needs are.
So that's kind of the distribution point from
Yeah.
the school, up from the school, everybody within the school, maybe through the counselor, then to the
Correct.
cluster
Mhm.
social worker and up to your department and outward. Is that
That's
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about some of the issues and some of the ways we're addressing the issues. Is there one story that comes to mind, one student that comes to mind to y'all where you feel like this is kind of a symbolic of the success of our students, that this was maybe someone that was, and I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot, but if there was someone that you remember in through your work, any of you, that this was a student that really was facing some significant challenges, but because of the support and some of the help that they received, that when they went on to do great things, or at least their life took a much better and different course than it otherwise would have without that intervention.
Alan, I'll share one. I'm sure the ladies have multiple.
Yeah, I was like,
to
which
answer.
one?
Yeah.
But there was a young man a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago now, that was had a pretty significant injury. Matter of fact, in a JV football game against Buford High School, sustained an injury that paralyzed him. And as you can imagine, for a young man at that age, I mean, he was 6'4" and had hopes and dreams, but didn't really have a strong home life at the time, and experienced a lot of the social ills that we've talked about. Really was kind of giving up hope on life. And a counselor, a football coach, and the community wrapped their arms around this young man in such a way. Not only did he graduate from high school, but he graduated from high school on time with his class. And so he was coming to school on Saturdays, right, with counselors, get them there. We had community folks that helped his family secure transportation and get a van, build accessible ramps into his home. And this young man went on and graduated from Georgia Gwinnett College. As a matter of fact, this is his book.
Oh, wow.
So he's now an author and tells his story and goes around inspiring others. His name is Arquavius Crane. We call him Q. But just a truly inspirational story of overcoming all the odds, having the audacity to rebel against the odds in spite of
What's the name of that book?
It's called Wish in a Jar by Arquavius Crane, and he's affectionately known as Q. And he gives back in this community to this day, oftentimes speaking at Boys and Girls Clubs. We've had him speak at the district office, and he goes around different schools. I know that he is a motivational speaker now, has aspirations of becoming a lawyer, going to law school, and so it could not have happened. His life story could not have happened without the support of those counselors and social workers and coaches and community folks that really went a long way to, even when he was angry, when his grandmother was angry, to continue to love and wrap their arms around him in such a way that those barriers were removed. One time he couldn't even speak, he couldn't write, and they provided all the tools necessary through technology to ensure that he could get his education. Just an incredible story.
That is cool. That's motivating, and certainly there's lots of stories out there, I bet, like similar to that. And if we can reach every single child like that and do that with them, it almost seems impossible, right? But I think if you three can represent what the county's about, I think anything's possible.
Well, you never know how far one conversation.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Yeah.
One little nudge, one little
nudge,
person.
that's right. And I believe that every opportunity we have is not by chance. Right? I believe sometimes that we fail to recognize that we are here for a purpose. Sometimes the purpose is beyond just getting a paycheck. Right? And so for us, it's not about the paycheck. I mean, it really is about us investing in each student that comes to Gwinnett County Public Schools and making sure that they can reach their full academic potential and that that they can become civically engaged in their communities and give back. This country needs them. We need them. Some people say that this young generation, they're our future, but I would say to you, they're our very now.
Yeah.
We need to start now preparing them for their future. And their future looks very different than our future.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And so our schools and our supports, it doesn't need to, to be our grandma's support structures or schools. We need to have schools that are preparing them for their future.
The way we should look at it is that we're in 2018, right? And you take a 4-year-old, 5-year-old that's coming to school, a 6-year-old, and you put 20 years out, and when they're graduating, you're talking about a 2038 student. And what is the
Yes.
world going to be in
Yes.
2038?
That's right.
When they come out into the world, out of college, hopefully, or out of wherever they need to come out of, whether it's college or a STEM school where they graduate and become a coder or a programmer, whatever they want to do in their skill sets. But they're a 28, 38 adult at that point. And what does that mean? I mean, life will be totally different than it is now.
And what they experienced growing up and what they had access to and the opportunities that we provided them, not just as a school system, but as a community, will dictate where they are in life and where our community is as a whole because of our success or failure to address their needs when they were young. So definitely want to thank each of you for what you do on a daily basis, beyond just the job, but what you do with your heart and where you've chosen to invest yourself with your time. And so certainly grateful for that, and certainly grateful for y'all being here with us today to kind of share this with us. This is actually going to be one of our first 2-part shows. The second part of this show will be our next show. We'll reach out to some of these organizations and entities that actually are engaging with you and with our school system to support our students, and look forward to exploring that as well. But again, we thank each of you so very much for being here today and shedding some light on things and just really making a great difference.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for your engagement. It's a wonderful opportunity.
It's our hard work.
Thank you, guys. I want to. We've had some technical difficulties as far as phone ringing. So if you're on Facebook listening to this, but this is the first time we've done it this way. Multiple cameras on a larger group of interviewees, and so I think it went well. We'll find out after we wrap up, but certainly the podcast is going well. As far as finding this on iTunes and iHeartRadio and Spotify and a few other places. And the video will also be put up on YouTube in a day or so. And you'll find this on the website at peachtreecornerslife.com also.
And on YouTube, what would they public search under to find it?
Peachtree Corners Life. Just search that. You'll be able to find it. Or go to peachtreecornerslife.com and you'll be able to get to the YouTube channel from there as well. But it's in multiple places, and it will be promoted over the next week or so as well, so then we can get a wider audience on this. We'll have some of the resources. We've taken some notes, so we'll have that on the website as well. So, if you want to help, it will be either in the description on the YouTube listing or on the website at peachtreecornerslife.com. I want to thank again Prototype Prime for providing this podcast studio for us to explore Gwinnett, for being a sponsor of this show and this podcast that we do also through the top 10 list that we do, and the coming sponsors that are interested in being able to help us bring this type of show to the community in a variety of ways. So Alan Kaplan, my co-host, who does a lot of the heavy lifting on this stuff, I want to thank him for being here to do this and for bringing the guests that we have. So.
Thank you to Rico. Couldn't do it without you. And Rico FIgliolini, excellent partner here, and appreciate being able to present this each month with you.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, I learn so much when I do this stuff with finding out things that I don't know is happening in Gwinnett County. So this is terrific. Thank you for being here with us, and we'll call it a show. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.